All right, so you should have supplies out in front of you so that we're ready to do a little work together so you understand what to do on page 159 and 160. I also want to let you know that on page 160, the number lines are optional. I definitely want you to try to draw number lines on page 159. On 160, they're optional. And again, if you haven't tore out page 119, that's a nice blank number line you could use as well. So, Miss Skoll posted a video last week that went over how to convert improper fractions into a mixed number by using division. And then if you had a remainder, that became your new numerator. We're going to review that a little bit, but if you did not watch that video, this might be a little bit harder for you. So you may want to go back and watch that video again. So we're going to start with something that I know you already know how to do. Earlier this year, we worked on the idea of multiplying unit fractions. And we said 5 times 1/8 is the same as 1/8 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eighths. So 5 times 1/8 is literally just that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8. If I did it on a number line, again, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8. 5 eighths. Now that's easy. That's not too bad. You guys have got that down. I know that you know how to do that. What's going to be a little trickier now is that we're going to be dealing with numbers that actually create improper fractions. And so it is a little bit more complicated. We're also going to be using some algebra to help us group our units together. Similar to what we did in the last video when we were looking at grouping our thirds in order to make 3 wholes or our fifths in order to make 2 wholes. So that's part of the algebra we're going to be working on. So let's start by looking at 6 times 1/2. So I have asked that we kind of be a little flexible with this today. It definitely wants you to use a number line, but I also want you to see how it relates to tape diagrams and to pictures of fractions as well. So I want you to kind of understand it a little bit better. So if I was doing 6 times 1/2, I know that that is 1/2 6 times. 1/2 plus 1/2 plus, you get the idea. I know when I do that, I'm going to end up with 6 halves. It makes sense. If I look at my picture, 1/2. 2 halves. 2 halves is the same as 1 whole. So right here, there's my 1 whole candy bar. Then I have 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves. Oh, look, 4 halves. Let's go back there. 4 halves is where my 2 wholes are, and that makes sense. 2 halves is 1 whole. 4 halves, well, there's 2 2s and 4. That's 2 wholes. 1 candy bar, 2 candy bars, and then when I get to my 6 halves, I have 3 whole candy bars. So we can see that 6 times 1/2 is the same as 3 whole candy bars. That's what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing it on a number line. So if I was drawing my number line and I know I need halves, I know I need 6 halves. So if I start with my number line, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, wait a second. That first line was a 0. So does that really count as 1? Or is that 1/2? 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves. So one thing to remember when you're doing this is if you're starting with 0, you're then going 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, 5 lines, 6 lines to get those 6 halves. So again, I can see here is a 1/2. Here's a 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves. Now, when I look, that algebra idea, that grouping it to make it a whole, I wanted you to see a visual, but I also want you to see that 6 times 1/2, well, how many halves are in a whole? Well, let's look. There's one whole. It looks like that's 2 halves. So if I did my parentheses like this, and like this, and like this, I can see I have 1, 2, 3.